I got him, Harry! I got him! Harry, get up! Give me a hand! Ow! I got him! Harry, help me get up! I got him!
Hey, what's up? Thanks for clicking. Season 54 is here, and it brings with it Hunt Royale's first insect pet, Boris.
I am invincible!
He's a poison-based pet and functions similarly to Serpent Dragon, our existing fire-based counterpart. Now, before I dive into the usual breakdown, I just want to quickly explain what happened last week and why the video went up and then down and now it's back up. I actually ended up uploading this last week the same exact morning that patch 3.10.1 dropped, which brought with it some changes to pets that were pretty noticeable and pretty significant. So I ended up pulling the video to avoid spreading outdated information, and so that I could have time to update it with correct tests and conclusions. In its place, you may have noticed I uploaded this little masterpiece.
Abort! 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 Abort!
But something interesting happening. When I was reviewing the footage for the new video rework, I stumbled onto something that I'm sure maybe some of you actually already knew. Pets can actually benefit from their own auras, which is odd since the aura text clearly states that it only affects hunters. I checked in with Quor, and after running some of his tests, including older patches that he had access to, he confirmed it's always worked that way. So rather than changing the behavior, he's just planning to update the aura description to reflect what's actually happening in-game. And while all that was happening, patch 3.11.0 just dropped, which brought with it our first bird pet. So instead of endlessly reworking this video and delaying the next video I can work on, I decided just to upload this version as is. These videos are actually kind of meant to be some sort of a time capsule, something that you can look back on and see just how much the game's evolved over a set period of time. Even in this example, if the game only existed like this for about a week before the patch came out, I still think it's pretty interesting to see how much pets have shifted in just this month alone. So with all that being said, I'm just going to continue the video the way it was originally intended, and just know in the back of your head that a lot of this stuff is not correct anymore, and obviously conclusions and test results are very different now. We're going to start things off with a quick breakdown of Boris's kit just to see how he works. Then we're going to end up putting him to the test to see how he stacks up against the other pets, and then as always, we're going to finish things off with a look at 3.10.0's patch notes. Now let's take a quick look at Boris's stats. When fully leveled to 10, this spider deals damage equal to 80% of your hunter's base damage per attack, and it attacks at a rate of 80% of your hunter's attack speed. As a poison-based pet, Boris' special ability, Poisonous Bite, adds 16 stacks of poison to its target with each hit. On top of that, its Poisonous Aura boosts all poison damage dealt by hunters by 30% while nearby. The first talents offered up in the new insect tree are Toxic Enzymes, the DPS talent, and Spider Rent, the economy talent. Toxic Enzymes will increase poison damage dealt by 2% with each talent point taken, capping out at 20% with an added bonus of 4% when fed or having max affection. Spider Rent will give a gold bonus each day at your first login, granting 10 to 20 gold per talent point spent, capping at 100 to 200 gold, or 125 to 250 when fed or with max affection. Now that we've gone over the basics of Boris's abilities, let's see how he stacks up against the other pets. We'll start things off by comparing his stat progression to the other pets before jumping into some live testing. On paper, Boris should deal around 64% of your hunter's DPS with his basic attacks. Cerberus and Peanut both have an additional DPS value listed here, as their special attacks can affect their damage stat. But if those two pets get to use their special attacks when calculating their DPS, we should try to do the same for these pets and see how their special attacks come into play. And as I've previously established in tests that we've done before, you can't easily calculate their DPS directly, so we're going to take them to a training dummy and see what kind of DPS they're doing. Since the last round of testing, a bug, no pun intended, was discovered where pets were incorrectly taking control of debuff ticks, specifically fire and poison ticks, causing hunters to miss out on large amounts of damage from those effects. With the bug now fixed, I've gone back and rerun all these tests to get accurate, updated numbers. So as usual, the hunter used for these tests is going to be Leprechaun, equipped with the same gear as in previous runs. I've taken DPS readings at the 15, 30, and 60 second marks, since some of these pets ramp up their damage over time. To keep things more accurate, I decided to skip the in-game average DPS value that is shown in the test mode, and instead calculate DPS myself by tracking the actual damage dealt to the target at each interval. So here are the results. Now, as you can see, this test isn't very good. There are just too many issues to draw solid conclusions from. For one, the dragon can't even stack its fire debuffs like the spider can with its poison stacks. And even if it could stack fire, this test is just going to be very biased in general towards the pets that have the capability to stack a debuff, leaving the other pets in their dust. So now we move on to the test where I try to make things somewhat even for all the pets and see how they do at that point. So for this test, now that we have a new pet that will always stack poison and it can't be reset, I've just decided to try to give everybody access to all of the debuffs. That way things should stay a little closer together and alleviate any runaway leaders. So, in this case, I've added a fire set so that everybody can stack fire. I've kept the one poison gem so that everybody can stack poison. I still added in the earth gem so that everybody has access to earth damage. And then I rounded things off with blue tentacles so that everybody has additional stacking capabilities. The other aspect of this test that I previously did was having Leprechaun fighting alongside the pets to make use of their talents and, most importantly, their auras. This should give us a fairly good idea what to expect when they fight alongside us in game. And here are the results for this new test. I think I may have leaned a little too heavily into the red gems, giving a slight advantage to the dragon pet, but regardless, the real surprise is the cat coming in at a very close second place. Our new insect pet takes a relatively close third place, which isn't that surprising, and the dog and squirrel trailing far behind in fourth and fifth place since they don't really have any bonuses to the stacking meta. One thing to keep in mind with all of these tests that I'm running here is that there are so many variables at play here that can easily change the rankings of any of these pets. All of these results should be taken with a huge grain of salt. Different hunter choices, perks, gear, enchantments, rearranging power stones, having a second hunter to join you with their own buffs that they provide, pet talents, dungeon resistances. I mean, seriously, the list goes on and on. At best, I think these tests are just an interesting snapshot to consider, and hopefully will help you understand where their power may lie and what their benefits are. To demonstrate this concept, let's just run one final test. How do these pets perform when killing the same boss but without a hunter to help stack debuffs or benefit from their talents and auras? So here's what I found. While the dragon pet still holds the top spot, again likely due to the red stones equipped in the set, the rest of the rankings shift significantly. The most notable change is that the cat pet drops all the way down to last place. These results just go to show how easily these rankings can change, which brings me to the same conclusion I've had ever since I started running these tests. Each pet will perform better than the others when used to its own strength. By that I mean, use your dragon pet when playing a fire level, the new spider pet when playing a poison level, your squirrel when playing an earth level, the dog when playing a hit points to damage hunter or build, and the cat, well, yeah, the cat's an interesting one. As you saw with the tests, the cat did do really well when stacking multiple afflictions on the same target. Should you bring the cat on a pure fire stacking level as opposed to your dragon? Probably not. Could you get away with it if you really needed to? Yeah, probably. Does your support set have fire and poison stones in it because you're really poor like me and you just can't make different sets, you just combined it all into one thing and make it work? And you're about to pick supervillain? Yeah, I mean, picking cat would be a really good choice then because now you're stacking fire, poison, and necrosis very quickly. While the cat's bleed mechanic currently holds it back from being a consistent DPS companion in my opinion, its attack speed aura offers some real utility, especially in the new Fractured Sanctum dungeon. You're going to need to be chipping away at the health pools for both crystals and Sanctum pillars during each level, and the more crystals you destroy, the more health crystals will have on all subsequent floors. So, boosting both your own and your partner's attack speed can make a noticeable difference when trying to bring those down efficiently. The trade-off being that DPS auras can stack with hunters, so if for example you're playing on a fire map, would you want your DPS to benefit from 2 dragon auras, or would you rather them have 1 dragon aura and your cat's attack speed aura? It's all very situational and really depends on your gear and what hunters you're using, which makes gauging the cat's value a bit tricky, but at least now you hopefully have a better understanding of how best to utilize not just the cat, but all the pets. For me, it's just a no-brainer for Boris. He's already been plugged into my poison set and he's ready to go. While I do think there would be stronger pet choices when playing lower tiered content when farming, such as fire for its AoE explosion so you can farm trash faster, or earth damage because you just flat out can kill stuff quicker because it has such high upfront damage, I think Boris is still going to be an extremely valuable asset when progressing through Fractured Sanctum. So there we have it. Boris is a strong showing for the first insect pet, and a welcome addition into Hunt Royale's current meta. Now, as for these patch notes, let's give them a quick look and see what we have here. Since my last patch review, update 3.9.1 dropped, with a few quality of life improvements worth highlighting. So first up on that list is going to be the new way that Hunter cores are displayed. Instead of having to dig into each Hunter's individual Awakening tab, you can now plainly see how many cores you own right from the main Hunters tab. This is a huge improvement we were all hoping to get, and the new UI is actually pretty spot on. You'll see a small icon in the lower left corner of any Hunter's portrait showing how many cores you currently have for them, ranging from 1 to 2. And once you get that coveted third core, a green upgrade arrow will appear, signaling that that Hunter is ready for their second Awakening. This leads into another nice addition to the game that wasn't actually mentioned in the patch notes, the Universal Core. As the name suggests, this core can be used in place of any Hunter core to help unlock a Hunter's second Awakening. So as Papa Kix explains here, if you've got a Hunter sitting at 2 out of 3 cores, whether RNG just hasn't been going your way, or your Hunter is super strong and you really want to prioritize getting them awakened, you can now slot in a Universal Core to act as the third core that you might be missing and finalize that Awakening. And to be honest, if you're really rich, if you just use 3 Universal Cores on somebody that has 0 cores, you can awaken them that way as well if you want. Now these are definitely going to be a rare resource, but so far I've only seen them appear as a 3,300 event currency reward during one of the events. But they could eventually be added in other systems like the seasonal track, or possibly weekly clan chests. Definitely something to keep an eye out for, as these are going to be very useful, particularly when the second round of Awakening 2s come out later this year. A visual timer has been added to your drafting selections in both ADF and Fractured Sanctum modes. While the timer has technically always existed behind the scenes, it's now visible, letting us see exactly how long until our Hunter choices refresh. This makes it a lot easier to decide whether to jump into a round with what you've got, or maybe wait a few minutes for potentially better options. A small change, but definitely a helpful one for planning out your runs more efficiently. Now moving right along into this patch's changes, first up on the list we have another great quality of life improvement, but this time it's for endgame players. You can now purchase Legacy Gem Boxes directly from the Dark Forest shop using your excess Dark Forest gems. This is especially helpful if you're at the point where farming Chaos Dungeon for Legacy Gems feels inefficient compared to grinding ADF or FS. All those leftover schematics you don't plan on using? Well, as you know, you can break them down, turn them into Dark Forest gems, and then you can funnel them back into Legacy Gem Purchases. It's a nice little loop that saves you from having to backtrack for outdated materials, and helps keep your progress streamlined, making better use of your time in-game. On a somewhat similar note, the Daily Challenge Trader now sells new gem rewards, which gives players more flexibility in how they collect key upgraded materials. You can now buy the same Legacy box that we just talked about that was added to the Dark Forest vendor, along with raw Dark Forest gems, and more importantly, Fractured Sanctum gems. For 100 Daily Challenge currency, you can pick up either 1 Legacy gem box, 200 Dark Forest gems, or 100 Fractured Sanctum gems. This is a nice little addition for players who might be having a tough time early on in FS, since it gives you an easier and more consistent way to get the gems you need for Power Stone crafting and gear upgrades. When fighting the Kraken, Cannonballs will now deal damage based on a percentage of the Kraken's maximum hit points. So for example, a level 1 Kraken in Chaos mode has 12 million health, and each Cannonball will hit it for 600,000 damage. That means it will take you 20 hits to take it down with cannon fire, and honestly, you have more than enough time in a round to make that happen if you're collecting every Cannonball as it spawns. The cannon damage doesn't interact with poison or fire stacks on the Kraken, which is a bit of a bummer, but extra guaranteed damage is always a nice bonus, especially for lower level players who are trying to progress through that dungeon. Sniper's projectile spread is now reduced for each multi-shot selected, so this is pretty awesome, but I gotta say, I'm a little bit torn on this one because that was actually an idea I was gonna pitch as a potential new item enchantment that could have been added to the game. There are a few hunters that immediately pop into mind that could really benefit from something like this, And I thought it honestly would have fit perfectly into the current enchantment system, where certain enchantments feel more useful or even mandatory, depending on which hunter you're playing. That way, the enchantment meta gets a little more variety, and we can avoid the one loadout to rule them all type situation. But more importantly than that, if this were an item enchantment instead of a baked-in ability, it could have let players decide how they wanted to use Sniper. So by that I mean, before this buff, her Awakening 2 multi-shot spread was ridiculous, and it would just absolutely screen clear everything, which would make her an amazing farming utility hunter, but that could also transition into a support role in the later stages of a round when you're fighting a boss, where she could just walk point blank up to somebody and just shotgun them in the face, stacking poison and fire really quickly. Now, not the most thematic thing ever, but still really fun to do. Now, after the buff, her farming potential takes a bit of a hit depending on your multi-shot perk selection, and that farming support hybrid playstyle is kind of gone. She just really zugs now, which is still really good and good news, as this is a buff, and I would definitely recommend checking her out if you haven't already. Like, she's very fun, but maybe the other hunters will get something similar. So here's a big one. Fractured Sanctum's entry requirements have been lowered. The trophy requirement dropped from 10 million all the way down to 7.7 million, and the Awakening 2 hunter requirement has been completely removed. In its place, you'll now only need 49 Awakening 1 hunters, which honestly is actually kind of low considering how many hunters we have in the game at this point. So this is actually really good news for players who might be able to get carried by higher tier friends or clanmates, giving more people a chance to experience Fractured Sanctum. Now, having said that, aiming to have some Awakening 2 hunters on your team is still a really good idea, since the difficulty is still pretty steep, so you'll definitely be doing yourself a favor by focusing on that goal anyways. And speaking of Fractured Sanctum, rewards have been boosted just a little bit, including better trophy scaling for each crystal you destroy. Now, this is great news, making the dungeon we'll be grinding for the next several months much more rewarding overall, so it's a welcome change. There was also a small fix to the hunter draft for Fractured Sanctum. Previously, if you won at least one level, your draft choices weren't updating or refreshing like they do in Abyssal Dark Forest. This has now been fixed, and with the additional 20-minute timer display that we talked about earlier, it should now actually be a lot easier to plan and get the optimal roster selection if you need it. Amongst some other small fixes here and there, that kind of sums up what this patch has to offer, and honestly, it's another solid step forward in Hunt Royale's development. Thanks so much for sticking with me through this video if you made it this far. If you haven't already and would like to support this channel, please feel free to use code VIGO in your shop. Thank you very much to anyone that's already redeemed my code at some point. There are a lot of codes out there, so it means a lot to have some people using mine. Appreciate you guys. Until the next one, good luck and happy hunting.